There is a skyscraper in Manhattan right now that engineers had to bolt to the earth with 200 steel anchors just to stop the wind from ripping it out of the ground. The building cost over $2 billion to build. It took more than 10 years to finish, and the $98 million penthouse at the top still has no buyer. The tower opened in 2021. By 2023, the main lender had written off $82 million in losses. The project was, by the developer's own private words, commercially unsuccessful. New Yorkers gave the building a nickname that follows it everywhere. They call it the Ghost Tower. The original marketing promised the most desired address on Billionaires Row. That promise would later become the exact thing that made the building so hard to sell. In 2026, whether Steinway Tower is a triumph or a disaster depends entirely on which part of the story you are looking at. Steinway Tower stands on West 57th Street in Midtown Manhattan, rising 1,428 feet above the sidewalk. It is the thinnest skyscraper ever built, barely 60 feet wide at its narrowest. That gives it a height-to-width ratio of 1 to 24, roughly 3 times thinner than a typical skyscraper. The building is about as wide as a bowling lane is long. Now picture stacking 24 of those lanes on top of each other, straight up into the sky. That is the shape of this tower. From certain angles along 57th Street, the building nearly vanishes behind its own neighbors. That ratio creates a physics problem that almost nobody thinks about. When wind hits a tall, thin structure, the force does not just push the building sideways. It moves down through the full height of the tower and creates what engineers call uplift, a vertical pulling force at the base. In a wider building, the weight pressing down on the ground keeps everything locked in place. There is enough mass spread across enough ground for the math to work. Steinway Tower is so narrow that its base covers less ground than a tennis court. There is not enough weight pressing down to fight the upward pull that strong wind creates at the top. In the worst conditions, the tower would try to lift off the ground. The engineering team solved this by drilling about 200 steel rock anchors straight down into the Manhattan schist beneath the city, each one reaching nearly 100 feet into solid rock. The schist holds up to 60 short tons per square foot, some of the strongest building stone on the planet. This same rock is the reason skyscrapers exist in New York at all. It sits close to the surface in Midtown and Lower Manhattan, which is why the tallest buildings cluster in those two areas. The rock between them, under Greenwich Village and Soho, sits much deeper and is harder to reach. Steinway Tower sits right above some of the best bedrock access in the city. Without that natural luck, the anchor system would not have worked at the depths needed. The anchors grip the bedrock like the root system of a giant tree, holding tightly enough to resist forces that would otherwise pull the whole structure free. 200 anchors, 100 feet deep, just to keep the building connected to the earth. And the base was not even the hardest problem the engineers faced. Every inch of floor space inside this building is worth thousands of dollars. The walls that hold the structure up also decide how much living area exists on each floor. The engineers needed walls thin enough to fit the most living space on each floor while still carrying the full load of a 1,400-foot tower from above. Normal concrete in apartment buildings holds about 5,000 pounds per square inch before it fails. It is strong enough for almost any typical building. The concrete inside Steinway Tower reaches 14,000 pounds per square inch in the lower support walls and core, nearly 3 times stronger. The mix is so dense it acts more like crushed stone than normal concrete. That strength let the engineers build the walls much thinner while still holding everything up, which means more living space on each floor, more money per story, and a building that could actually cover its costs on paper. The support system runs the full height of the tower, 2 massive steel-reinforced concrete walls along the east and west faces, linked by connecting walls in a layout shaped like the letter H. Over 5.5 million straight feet of steel bar running through 49,000 cubic yards of concrete. 4 bracing walls at the machine floor levels add stiffness. The same thinness that lets the building reach 1,400 feet also makes it open to a force that almost nobody has heard of. It is called vortex shedding, and it nearly stopped Steinway Tower from being built at all. When wind flows around a tall, narrow structure, the airflow splits at the edges and creates spinning pockets of low pressure called vortices. These vortices release from switching sides of the building. The left side sheds one, then the right side sheds one. Same pattern, over and over. Each one gives the building a small, sideways push. Left, right, right. On a short building, nobody notices. On a 1,400-foot needle of concrete and glass, those pushes build into a sway that people inside can feel. And if the timing of the shedding matches the natural rhythm of the building, the motion grows stronger with every cycle. It is the same reason soldiers break step on a bridge. Matched rhythm can tear a structure apart. The engineering team used 3 methods at the same time to break that cycle. The first is the shape of the building itself. The edges step and taper in a pattern that breaks up the airflow before it can settle into a steady switching rhythm. The second is the outer surface. The entire outside is covered in hand-laid terracotta tile, thousands of blocks made in Mexico and put together in 22 different shapes that ripple across the surface like a slowly breaking wave. Thin bronze strips run between the panels. The design was inspired by the classic Manhattan towers of the 1920s and 30s. A clear choice to reject the sleek glass boxes that fill newer projects like Hudson Yards. That choice turned out to have a key engineering benefit. The rough, textured surface creates choppy air the moment wind touches it, and choppy air cannot build the steady pressure cycle that causes dangerous swaying. The third answer is the most striking. At the 51st, 71st, and 86th floors, the building has open gaps called blow-through floors. Entire stories left empty and open to the sky so wind passes straight through instead of pressing against a solid wall. 3 full floors with nothing in them, built only to manage the wind. Near the very top sits an 800-ton tuned mass damper, a block of steel the size of a small house hung on hydraulic systems inside the structure. When the building sways one way, the damper shifts the other, soaking up the energy before residents feel it. At the time it was put in, it was reported as the heaviest solid damper ever placed inside an apartment tower. Even with all of that, the top of the tower moves up to about 3 feet in strong wind. That is by design. A building that bends is a building that survives. A building that refuses to move is a building that breaks. 3 feet of sway, 1,400 feet in the air, in a home listed at $50 million. The engineering worked. The reputation did not. On October 29, 2020, during Hurricane Zeta, the construction crane at the top of the tower began spinning out of control in high winds. It was the tallest freestanding construction crane in New York City history, reaching over 200 feet above the top of the building. A loose cable sent a heavy weight swinging over and over into the side of the building, punching into the outer wall of a tower that had already taken years and hundreds of millions of dollars to reach that height. Chunks of metal cladding weighing up to 300 pounds broke free and fell onto West 57th Street, sparking against the rigging as they dropped. The city shut down 4 blocks. The fire department responded. Subway trains skipped nearby stations. The Department of Buildings issued a full stop work order. The developer later filed a $50 million lawsuit against the crane company, claiming the equipment was not properly locked down despite advanced storm warnings from the city. The crane incident happened on the exact same date, 8 years to the day, as the famous crane collapsed at the neighboring 157 tower during Superstorm Sandy. 2 cranes, 2 storms, 2 buildings on the same stretch of Billionaires Row. That moment was supposed to be the worst of it. It was not. 2 years later, in February 2022, sheets of ice broke loose from the upper floors and crashed onto the street below during a winter storm. A chunk went through a car windshield and struck the driver. A 35-year-old woman rushed to the hospital. She survived. The building's sticking out terracotta ledges and bronze trim create surfaces where ice builds up in cold weather, a problem spotted well before the tower even opened. And those were not the only incidents. During construction, a glass panel fell 56 stories. A terracotta block dropped 81 floors and dented a taxi. Scaffolding broke free from the 55th floor and scattered broken glass across the sidewalk. Concrete fell during a pour and struck the neighboring Hampshire house. A subcontractor was charged with stealing $1.7 million from over 500 workers and hiding $42 million in unreported wages. A separate lawsuit claimed a failed heating system caused water damage across 10 floors, with claims over $11 million. The Department of Buildings issued violation after violation. For buyers thinking about a $50 million apartment in a building that keeps making headlines for things falling off of it, the math was simple. They looked elsewhere. And if the safety record were the only problem, the building might have bounced back on its name alone. Then, the money story fell apart. The original construction loans totaled $725 million, a $400 million top loan from one lender, a $325 million second-tier loan from another. A separate investor group put in $66 million for a 59% ownership stake. Cost overruns past $50 million set off a default in early 2017. A smaller piece of the debt was sold to a new lender with very aggressive terms, including a 20-day strict foreclosure window. A court allowed strict foreclosure without a public auction. The investors lost every dollar. $66 million gone. It later came out that hidden money partners had secretly agreed to give nearly half their profits to foreign investors no one else knew about, in exchange for $21 million. The wiped-out investors filed a federal fraud lawsuit seeking $136 million. It was thrown out. They appealed. Denied. State claims thrown out too. The final ruling came in April 2026, 9 years after the foreclosure. The developers owe nothing. 9 years of court battles. Zero recovery. The developer survived. New investors put in $90 million in fresh money. Construction continued. The building opened in 2021. And then the units went on the market at prices that matched the size of the original dream. Listings started around $12 million. Several went past $50 million. The penthouses climbed past $100 million. In a city packed with ultra-luxury choices, the sales did not come. By 2023, the main lender wrote off $82 million in losses. The ghost tower had fully earned its name. The version of this story that has spread the furthest stops here. The full picture is more layered. If you are finding this useful, subscribe. This channel covers the engineering, geology, and geography stories that explain how the built world actually works. While the money drama played out in courtrooms, the building itself was quietly doing what it was made to do. It was standing in the wind, bending, taking the forces, staying upright. And inside, for the people who did buy, the experience is unlike anything else in home building. From the upper floors on a clear day, you can see the full length of Central Park spread out below, the Hudson River to the west, the East River to the east. The Manhattan street grid stretching to the skyline in every direction. It is one of the best views from any home anywhere on the planet. The finishes are world-class. The ceiling heights, the materials, the fixtures are all built to match what buyers are paying. What the marketing does not mention is what it is really like to live inside a structure this thin and this tall. Pumping water to the 90th floor needs systems that run all the time and make noise. The elevators travel so far and so fast that the pressure changes inside the shaft create ear popping, like altitude changes on an airplane. These are not design flaws. They are the basic physics of living 1,000 feet above street level. They are also things that no shiny sales brochure mentions. When the wind picks up, the building moves. A slow, gentle sway, like standing on a huge ship in calm water. The damper soaks up most of the motion. But it is real, and for some residents, it never fully becomes normal. There are sounds too. Steel and concrete bend under shifting wind loads. Low creaking, groaning, the odd sharp snap. But lying in bed at 2 in the morning listening to your apartment groan like the hull of a ship is not what anyone pictures when they sign a $50 million contract. An important point that nearly every story about this building gets wrong. The worst complaints that spread online, the stories about flooding, elevator failures, cracking walls, and structural problems, come from a totally different tower. 432 Park Avenue, a separate super tall building 9 blocks east on the same stretch of 57th Street, is the source of nearly all of those stories. Mixing up the two buildings twists the real picture of what is happening inside Steinway Tower. And somehow, despite everything, the building started selling. In July 2024, a new sales team took over at Steinway Tower and totally remade the property. They moved the main entrance from 57th Street to 58th. They hired a new general manager with luxury hotel experience. They brought in a high-end restaurant group for daily resident catering. And they leased the historic Steinway & Sons piano showroom on the ground floor to a famous auction house, opening it to the public for the first time in over 10 years. The plan worked faster than anyone expected. Within roughly 20 months, the new team closed or signed about $480 million in deals. As of April 2026, 58 of 59 units are now sold or under contract. A British property builder known for creating London's most expensive housing project paid roughly $47 million for a penthouse first, listed at $66 million. A television star from one of America's most watched business competition shows paid about $20 million, moving from a different Billionaires row tower. Both took cuts of 20 to 30% from asking prices. The cuts were on purpose. Big names in the building draw other buyers willing to pay closer to full price. Oldest trick in luxury real estate. One unit remains. The 4-floor penthouse covering floors 80 through 83 was first listed at $110 million in April 2025. It has since been dropped to about $98 million. It is the last unsold home in the building. The $200 million top construction loan has already been paid back through sales money. The remaining debt comes due November 2026. If the penthouse sells, the project clears its books entirely. This is no longer just about one building. The entire row of ultra-luxury towers along 57th Street is going through the same shakeout at the same time. 432 Park Avenue, the 85-story concrete tower that opened in 2015, now faces a second lawsuit from its own residents, seeking over $165 million. Thousands of cracks have been found across the outer walls, including one measured at 10 inches deep in the building's structural core. Internal emails from the original design team, made public through the lawsuit, hold direct warnings written years before the building was done that certain design choices would lead to failure and lawsuits. The engineering team faced a choice between keeping the concrete's visual look even and avoiding cracks. The internal words were blunt: color or cracks. They chose color. The building may now need repairs, costing $100 to $160 million, and roughly 10 of 16 owners who resold units between 2021 and 2025 lost money on their purchases. Central Park Tower, the tallest apartment building in the western half of the world at 1,550 feet, is running 25% below its original sales targets. Its top penthouse was first priced at $250 million, then cut to $195 million, and still has no buyer. Across the street, a different tower tells a very different story. 220 Central Park South is the one clear winner on Billionaires Row, a limestone building designed to match pre-war Manhattan style. It closed a penthouse sale for $238 million in 2019, still the most expensive home sale in United States history. Nearly every unit has been claimed. In 2025, a resale closed for $82.5 million. $7 million more than the original price. It is one of the only super tall towers where owners are actually making money when they sell. The pattern is clear. Buildings designed to look like they belong in Manhattan are surviving. Buildings that bet on bare concrete as their whole identity are struggling. The money was flowing into the recovery. Manhattan's ultra-luxury market finished 2025 as its second best year on record for deals above $4 million, with nearly $12 billion in total volume. 3/4 of all condo buyers in the fourth quarter paid fully in cash, the second highest share ever recorded. Wall Street bonuses hit their largest pool since 1987. Then, on April 15, 2026, the mayor and governor announced a proposed yearly tax on second homes above $5 million. They filmed the announcement standing outside the most expensive apartment sale in the country on this very street. If state lawmakers approve, it would add a yearly cost to every unit on the row and change the money side of ultra-luxury real estate across Manhattan for good. Steinway Tower's remaining debt comes due in 7 months. The $98 million penthouse is still on the market. 432 Park Avenue is still fighting in court over its own walls. Central Park Tower is still looking for a 9-figure buyer, and the proposed tax is still working through the state government. The thinnest skyscraper ever built solved every engineering problem that physics threw at it. 200 anchors hold it to the earth. 3 empty floors let the wind pass through. An 800-ton counterweight near the top keeps the sway hidden. The building stands exactly as designed. The question that remains has nothing to do with engineering. It is whether the market for homes at this height, at this price, in this political climate, can hold together the way the concrete does. As of today, that question is not settled, not even close. If you want to see what is happening to the rest of the towers on this street, that video is on screen now. Subscribe so you do not miss it.